The alarm rang at 6:30 a.m., and he did not move. It was not because he was exhausted or unwell. It was because the weight of everything he had postponed was already pressing heavily on his mind. His phone lay within reach. One quick glance, he told himself. Just a few seconds before getting up. Those few seconds quietly stretched into minutes. By the time he looked up, the morning was already slipping away. The day had begun late once again. A familiar thought surfaced, uncomfortable but clear. He knew this pattern. Ignoring it felt easier than confronting it. He had goals. Serious ones. Plans he once spoke about with conviction. A different career path he promised himself he would pursue. Personal habits he meant to change. A version of his life that existed vividly in his thoughts, yet never seemed to materialize in reality. Every night, he assured himself that tomorrow would be different. Every morning proved otherwise. Procrastination did not feel like laziness in those moments. It felt like relief. Relief from pressure, from responsibility, from the risk of trying and falling short. That morning, seated at the edge of his bed with the phone glowing in his hand, he did not realize that his relationship with procrastination was approaching a turning point. Not through motivation or discipline, but through a simple rule that required only 30 seconds. His struggle was not dramatic or obvious to others. He went to work, met basic responsibilities, and maintained appearances. From the outside, his life seemed orderly and functional. Internally, however, he carried a persistent sense of disappointment. His laptop contained folders labeled with intentions he never fulfilled. His phone held notes outlining goals that remained untouched. Ideas accumulated, but execution never followed. Each unfinished task quietly reinforced a damaging belief that he lacked consistency, that he could not be trusted to follow through. At night, his thoughts repeated the same questions. Why did he always delay? Why was starting so difficult? Why did effort feel heavier for him than for others? He tried advice that was widely recommended. He attempted to wake earlier, to structure his days more rigidly, to search for motivation or purpose. None of it lasted. Even motivational content became another form of delay rather than a catalyst for action. The issue was not a lack of knowledge. He knew what needed to be done. The problem existed in the brief moment before beginning, the instant where intention met resistance. That pause was where procrastination lived. His days followed a predictable cycle. Mornings began rushed, afternoons filled with deferred plans, and evenings dissolved into distraction. Weeks passed, and nothing truly changed. What troubled him most was not the growing list of unfinished tasks, but the creeping sense that this pattern defined him. Procrastination was no longer a habit. It was becoming an identity. The shift began on an ordinary afternoon. He sat at his desk, avoiding a simple task that required very little effort, yet felt unreasonably difficult to start. His mind offered familiar excuses. He was not in the right mood. He needed more focus. He could do it later. As his hand reached for his phone, he recalled a brief conversation with a colleague earlier that week. Someone calm and consistent, known for steady productivity. When asked how he remained disciplined, the response had been simple. He did not wait to feel ready. He allowed himself 30 seconds to begin. At the time, it seemed almost trivial. Now, faced with the same resistance he experienced daily, the idea returned. 30 seconds. Not to complete the task. Not to perform it perfectly. Just to start. He opened the file, placed his hands on the keyboard, and set a timer. Doubt immediately followed. The effort felt pointless. The task still felt uncomfortable. But the clock continued to move. As the seconds passed, something subtle changed. His attention shifted away from emotion and toward action. By the time the timer ended, he was already engaged. Stopping felt more disruptive than continuing. That moment revealed something critical. The difficulty was never the task itself. It was the act of beginning. The mind resists uncertainty more than effort. When a task feels large or undefined, it triggers avoidance. By reducing the commitment to 30 seconds, the perceived threat disappears. The mind no longer feels the need to escape. Action interrupts hesitation. Movement creates clarity. That day, he did not accomplish everything he hoped to. But he completed something. That alone marked a meaningful change. The following morning, the same alarm rang. The same temptations appeared. Instead of negotiating with himself about the entire day, he focused on a single decision. 30 seconds. He stood up before his thoughts could intervene. One small action led naturally to another. The day began differently. He applied the same approach to his work. Instead of confronting entire projects, he committed to opening files, reading the first line, or writing a single sentence. On some occasions, he stopped after 30 seconds. That was acceptable. What mattered was the start. Without self-judgment, progress became possible. Over time, something unexpected occurred. The emotional burden surrounding tasks began to diminish. Each small action reinforced a new message. He was capable of beginning. Momentum developed gradually. Small efforts accumulated. Familiarity replaced resistance. Tasks that once felt overwhelming became manageable, then routine. The change extended beyond productivity. His confidence improved. His trust in himself grew. Discipline no longer meant forcing motivation. It meant reducing resistance. There were still days of distraction and delay. The difference was that he now had a reliable way to reset. No guilt, no dramatic resolutions. Just another 30 seconds. Months later, when asked what had helped him overcome procrastination, his answer was straightforward. He stopped waiting to feel ready. He began acting before hesitation could take control. Procrastination, he realized, was not a lack of time or ability. It was a habit of hesitation. The solution was not greater motivation, but a smaller entry point. If you find yourself recognizing these patterns, consider how many goals were not abandoned because they were too difficult, but because they were never consistently started. Meaningful change does not begin with motivation. It begins with action, often smaller than expected. After this moment, choose one task you have been avoiding. Not the most demanding one. Simply one that requires initiation. Commit to 30 seconds. When those seconds pass, you may stop if you choose. More often than not, you will continue. Momentum does not require inspiration. It requires movement. You do not need to become someone new. You only need to begin. 30 seconds is enough.